Hello, welcome, one and all, to Be on the Edge. I'm your host, Brandy Deutsch.
I'm your co-host, Didi DeMayo. We're so happy to have you with us today. Light, love, and blessings.
What an amazing show we have today. I'm so excited for today's show. I always say that. I say I'm excited every show, don't I, Didi? But I am. I'm extremely excited because today we're going to be talking about addiction recovery. And this is something that so many people struggle with. You know, addiction can come in so many different forms, like alcohol being the most common, but drugs, prescription drugs, non-prescription drugs. People can be addicted to sex or pornography or shopping or gambling, stealing. I mean, the addiction spectrum is so huge, but really and truly, we're going to focus on sex. I'm sorry, not sex.
Hey, you changed the show.
Not today. Sorry. Freudian slip.
Our guests are in the green room going, what? I wasn't ready for that.
I didn't sign up for that. Today we're going to focus on drugs and alcohol addiction, specifically recovery for those things. So what I found out, a little statistic just recently, I mean, even more so now with the pandemic happening, COVID-19 came through and we had this past year, 81,000 deaths due to drug overdose. I mean, when I saw that, I said, we gotta help people. We gotta reach out. I mean, there's only so much we could do, right? But one person can do a lot. And so I wanted to have some really great guests on who know what they're talking about, who've been through it, who are here to help people. And I'm just really excited for our guest today. So with that, I want to go ahead and get into it because we have a lot to talk about. So I want to introduce David Craig. He graduated from Houston's High School of Performing and Visual Arts. As a leader, he writes, records, and plays original music with an individual modern style, and many of his compositions are performed by local jazz artists. And as a teacher, he's taught many students, and many have gone through music careers in New York and around the world, right, David? Mm-hmm. And David's had past struggles with the disease of addiction, and it brought him to where he is in his life today. And he's going to talk about it with us. So I'm really, really honored to have you here today, David. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, Brandy, and thank you, Didi, for having me. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Yeah.
You're welcome. We're so happy to have you. And you seem to be an accomplished musician. Let me say, first of all, I know that's not easy. I know it's not easy to make it in the music business. I know a lot of musicians from all over the world, and it's a challenge just to begin with, right? And yeah. I think there's a common misconception about people who become addicted to drugs and alcohol. I do first want to hear about your story a little bit. I'd like for you to tell people a little bit about your struggles with addiction, and I also would like to know what brought you here today. How is it that you are here today and like thriving in this world?
Okay. Well, I'll try to keep it kind of brief. So I was born to a mom who I found out really she struggled with a lot of problems. She had emotional traumas and was herself an addict of some kind. It's sort of unclear, really, to me. But she struggled with various substances over her life, and as a young child, I was a victim of some pretty bad trauma, and I didn't really think that much of it as a kid. I just was glad it stopped and just sort of carried on being a resilient child. But as soon as I could figure out how to change the way I felt from the outside by putting something in my body, I was totally in. If I could find mom's pills and just eat whatever they were, and I felt, different, that was great. And then, drinking. And I think one of the things that sort of saved me emotionally was my attachment to music. And I found out later that my biological father was an accomplished musician. and that's a whole nother story. But so my mom always encouraged my music, and so there was a time when I really I heard music, and it sort of did for me what drugs did before I was really a full blown drug addict as a child. It made me feel different, so I was totally in on that too. So these things kind of run hand in hand in my story for some reason because they made me forget about you know the um, the pain in my life. So anyway, you know, like a lot of American teenagers or whatever, I dabbled in this and that. But I looking back, everything. So much of my story, I look back at and go, "Oh wait, that wasn't normal." You're not supposed to be 9 years old and smoking weed, or eating mom's pills, or sneaking alcohol and things like that.
So you
Uh,
started really young. It sounds like you were a kid when you started to get addicted.
Yes. And I wouldn't say that I was really full blown addicted till probably somewhere around junior high school, because I was doing a lot of things like LSD and things like that, and speed and things like that,
Mhm.
pills, and smoking a lot of weed and drinking. And, before I got into HSPVA, I managed to stop doing drugs for a little bit because I wanted that so bad. I wanted that music thing so bad that I thought I could stop, and I did for maybe about a year. And then I was, because I'm in an artsy high school, and everybody's really really way too cool and really really hip, and the tragically hip and all that stuff. So I just got back into it again, and I was just really in for just decades of my life. So I'll be 53 in April, and I got sober March 24th of 2011. So I'm coming up on 10 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it feels kind of bad that I spent most of my life doing dope and alcohol and all that stuff. It just seems like kind of a waste in some ways.
Mm.
But actually, I think that the thing is that it just takes whatever it takes, and I'm still one of the fortunate ones, one of the blessed ones, because I'm here. And I think my story of getting sober is just it's probably the single greatest thing that's happened in my life. And
Mm.
that's a hard thing to say, because I have children, I have grandchildren, or I have things that stroke the ego about career, or you look how great you are, that kind of stuff. But really, the thing about it is it allowed me to become um, a better human, a better man, a better father, a better friend, and it led me on basically a spiritual path. And that I just really, there's no way, and I'm not saying that I'm all that, or I'm some kind of spiritual, you know, guru or anything like that. What I'm saying is, I just that wouldn't even be a possibility. So at least I have the chance to try to be that. I can work on that, because when you're addicted, you don't have you're really busy, you know, and you don't have time for small things like showering or paying bills or things like that. So how can you try to do any self-improvement or help your fellow man or any kind of thing like that? That is just way off the radar, if you know what I mean.
Right, absolutely. And so how did you come to where you are today? Did you go into recovery centers? Did you do it on your own? How did you come out of that 10 years ago?
Well, I think it's a very common story. We had talked yesterday about I think that you dress the monkey in any kind of outfit. It doesn't matter if he's wearing a spaceman outfit or a cowboy outfit. He's not a spaceman or a cowboy. He's just a monkey. So in AA they say the garden variety alcoholic. Really, we all are. We like to think that we're really special, but really we've abandoned everything and put everything aside so we can be selfish and do dope like the way we want to. And so
Mhm.
how I came to it is, after years and years of struggle, things just really started falling apart, and I was dying, and didn't have the courage to kill myself. I thought about it a lot. I lived on the seventh floor of a condo, and I thought about jumping off, and I would look off. I would look down, the balcony, and I thought, you know what? I'm probably going to make it. I'm probably going to live and just be really messed up,
Mhm.
And I just wanted to not wake up, but I kept waking up. And behind the scenes were friends in recovery, and they were all conspiring to, it was like the sheriff was in town, and there was going to be an ambush, and I had no gun, and they were like, "You got to come along with us," and they took care of my belongings because I was being foreclosed on. They took care of my children,
Wow.
and they just said, "You got to just not worry about any of your stuff, and you just come with us. We have some place for you to go." And that's kind of how it happened, And the thing about it is, and I think this is true for many of us, is I was really, like I said, I was really at the bottom. I mean, I was close to dying, you know. I mean, just physically, I was yellow and bloated and just, uh, really close. So, and that's an unfortunate thing in addiction. Some people can just go, you know what, this is looking bad, and I need to get out, and they do. But not me. I just couldn't do that,
Right.
So I had to concede that I would listen to somebody else and let them tell me what to do.
I think
Wow.
that takes a lot of courage, though, because one of the things that, having friends that have walked in that path where they have had to have recovery and, their life has just been gone from, mountaintop to underneath the valley in the mud, they're like, how do they can trust giving someone else control, trusting that guidance, because they feel like they're in power and control when they're spinning out on all these drugs, and they don't
Mhm.
have control over anything at that point. And getting them to
Right.
realize that is not control. You really don't
Mhm.
have control. You've already given away your power.
That's right.
So it's a big
We're
step. It's a lot of
we're
courage.
we're taught that we're an example of self-will run
Mhm.
riot, is what it says, and that's really what it is. It's what I want. It's what I want, and it's like, yeah, but that's going to kill you. And like, I don't care. This is what I want. Like a baby, a baby, screams and wants the candy, or wants to jump into the deep end of the pool or whatever. But the baby doesn't know, And so I was pretty much like that. And but the suffering was so great that I was willing to listen to the people in the rooms of AA, and the short story is, they said, well, you got to work these steps, and you have to work them earnestly, and you have to work them honestly, and you can't leave any stone unturned. And after you've done them, if you find some more stones unturned, you need to overturn them, and you need to work on this stuff.
Mhm.
And they said that they suggested, nobody makes you do anything in AA. They suggest to you, as a course of action for recovery, you should do this and that and the other. And they said, well, you need to find a power greater than yourself, and you need to have develop a relationship with it.
Mhm.
And that is something that I was missing, because I always wanted to be part of something, and I always felt left out of something. I
Yeah.
didn't. I wasn't in on the party. I wasn't in on the joke. I wasn't in with the cool kids. I didn't understand what was going on. you know. Go
I
ahead.
think that's a part of a lot of challenges that we have. Not just, I mean, addicted and non-addicted alike. I mean, I think we're all addicted to something. I'm gonna be
Hmm.
honest, even if it's
Hmm.
our own thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Being a meditator, an avid meditator, I come to believe that I was trained how to be addicted to my own thinking. So when I
Yeah.
had that realization, it's like, wow, well, everybody has something, right, that
Mhm.
they attach
Yes.
to.
Yes.
And so the one thing that's missing, that when we connect with and we kind of allow ourselves to be in that space of oneness, of connection, if it's not with other people, and it can be with people, it's
Hmm.
also this spiritual connection. And like you
Hmm.
said, higher power, whatever we want to call it, this
Hmm.
kind of oneness with something, it really does something for our psyche and for our consciousness.
Hmm.
I think it allows us to feel loved, and it allows us to feel wanted in a way that nothing else in this world, in the physical world, can.
Mhm.
That's
Hmm.
that's just my thing there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the beautiful thing is, and I know that this is a touchy subject and a source of controversy is the God word, but you know, I was never told, you know, I mean, like in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, if it said alcohol, I could substitute cocaine or crack or whatever I wanted, you know, and I think of all of it as the same thing. It's a mind altering substance that I want to do to check out. You know, because people get hung up on these little details. Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a cocaine or a methamphetamine user, whatever. I think it's all BS. But they said it's a God of your understanding. You know, it's a higher power of your understanding, of your choosing, really. So there, it took the idea of religion out, which you know I had a big hang up about, and I think a lot of us have a big hang up about, and I think a lot of us think we're so smart, and a lot of us are very smart, but our best thinking got us to the bottom of the barrel, and if we were
Mm.
lucky, our best thinking got us into a room of recovery.
Mm.
That's the best we could do. Our life fell apart and we're on the street and we got checked into some, you know, dump of a recovery center where we could get, you know, fed and somebody go, hey, you ought to check out a meeting or, you know, you ought to think about not getting high, you know.
Right, right.
And so that that really rang true for me because it doesn't have anything to do with a church or a religion or a sect or anything. It has to do with my conception of something greater than myself. And
Mm.
there's so many things in the universe greater than myself. I can walk outside at night and look straight up into the sky. And boys, that seems to be bigger than David, even though his ego thinks that he is just even bigger, you know, it's just not true. And I know that in my heart that that is absolutely not true, you know.
That's right.
And, you know, one of the things like this whole idea of knowing, you know, we like to be, we're, you know, science and, you know, fact based and all, you know, all these buzzwords or whatever, you know, like fact check and all this kind of crap. So, you know, I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about, he goes, he goes, I see no evidence of God because, you know, basically, you know, he can't see it, smell it, taste it, you know, write a formula for it or whatever. But he also said everything in the universe is made out of these elements, you know, hydrogen. I don't know what they are because I'm not that smart. I can't remember, but you know, they're made up of all of these elements, right? And he goes, and those things are what you're made of too. So we're made of the same thing as the stars. And I said, well, there it is then, isn't it? So that's enough evidence for the existence of God, or at least God as I understand it. And I'm going to go with that, you know, because we are all part of the same big giant mess, whatever this thing is, you know. So
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, David, what are some common misconceptions about people who become addicted to drugs and alcohol? Can you talk on that a little bit? Because it seems like
Sure.
you had friends and especially in the industry you're in, you know people who
Mm-hmm.
have been in that situation, including yourself. But what when people who are not in that scene or don't really understand, what are some misconceptions that people have about drug and alcohol addiction?
Well, you know, they think that they have some kind of a morality problem. That's kind of a big one, you know. Um, they think they have no willpower, they have
Mm.
no self-control and stuff like that, you know. And that's really just not the case, you know. It doesn't have to do with those things, at least in that regard, you know. I mean, you know, I was in a meeting once where this dude said, you know, my mom kept saying, you know, why can't you just stop? And he goes, you remember when you were sick with the flu, mom? And you had that, you know, um, that vomiting and that diarrhea that you just couldn't stop and it just would happen whenever and you just had to run to the bathroom. Why don't you just stop? You know, which
Mm.
it's not really exactly the same, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing. You just cannot stop, you know. And it has nothing to do with their character as people, you know. And you know, it's an equal opportunity killer. It doesn't matter what you know what economic background you come from, or whether you're straight or gay or white or black or green or whatever. It doesn't. It affects everybody.
Mhm.
Um, I just think that I don't. As far as misconceptions, the people that don't know about addiction, that are like normal people, I guess the best thing I can suggest is that they study it like you would have to just do the research and figure out what it is, because they think that they can help by doing certain things, and a lot of times these things actually don't help. In fact, they lead your addict to their death.
I think that's a really important point for people who don't understand the disease, who don't understand the situation or the background or any of it. We're going to talk to someone real soon in a few minutes who can give us more information about that. But I think that's the key. And how do we really reach out to people? It sounded like when you were talking about how you got to the recovery point, or point where you decided to go into recovery, that you had a community, or you had people who supported you, who were taking care of your kids, who were taking care of your things.
And
Can you talk a little bit?
these were people that, to be honest, I were friends of mine, but I wasn't really tight with them. Well, mainly because we didn't do dope together, and I thought they were weird. There was something like weird, like you'd see that they were like there was something. They were looking at me. They were funny, and it was because they were all in recovery, and they were going, "That guy, we're going to pluck that guy from the edge of death." And hopefully we'll actually get him. Otherwise, he's going to be gone. So they were plotting my demise. They're plotting the end of my glorious campaign, is what they were doing. They knew that that Rome was about to fall. And they were going to scoop up the remains and try to rebuild.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
So that's what the deal was. And so they're out there. I mean, I had a friend once tell me, he goes, we're like agents, and might seem overly, bullshitty or whatever, because you're an agent of God, man. I mean, that's your responsibility in recovery. Is if somebody is suffering and they reach out to you, you are obliged to give them a hand. And so that's what they were doing.
Well,
That's right.
I would recommend, though, that's true, and I agree. But always have that mindset, like someone that's drowning. You don't just go out there and get them. You reach and tow or throw or something, some kind of, like, you throw them a life jacket. You can't drown with them.
No, right.
So I
like we
think,
said.
yeah, I think our next guest is going to help us be able to talk about, how the family cannot drown with the person that's the addict.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, David, there's been a lot of talk for at least, a couple decades, about how genetics plays a part in addiction. And when you hear somebody say that, well, I'm genetically predisposed. So what's your response to that kind of logic?
Well, I would be shy of somebody that said, well, I'm genetically predisposed to being a drug addict. It sounds like a cop-out to me. But but people that deny it, well, yeah, I believe that you're genetically predisposed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you came off to me like that, I go, oh man, you are so full of shit. I can't take it. I'm genetically predisposed. So I got to keep doing this. It's usually we deny it. We deny the fact that we don't even see that our family was so fucked up. I mean, doesn't everybody get sexually abused, and doesn't everybody get beaten, and doesn't everybody get high with their parents, or doesn't everybody, get in car wrecks and go to jail and shit like that?
Yeah,
Don't you all? I mean, that's more like reality to me, at least in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yes, absolutely it is. I think the family of origin is something that has to be dealt with after you get sober, and I'm sure that our next guest can talk about that too. The family of origin is often a toxic place, because that's where we learned a lot of our coping mechanisms,
Absolutely.
and so we have to learn to have boundaries with them, to love them at a distance and then create a new family through fellowship.
I think that is a really, like, that's insightful. Like, that's hugely insightful for people who I think are kind of struggling with this, and the families of those who are struggling with this, because addiction not only affects one person who's involved in it, it affects people that they love, people who care about them, if they have children, if their job. I mean,
and conversely, they can't get the alcoholics sober, and it's not their job to, even though they
Yeah.
love them, they want them to go, well, they're family. I need to do this and I need to do that. And oftentimes the things they do are detrimental.
Yeah.
That is my experience. This is not,
Yeah.
none of this is like a black and white facts. You know, everybody's got their own story, but that is my experience.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. So, you know, with that, I'm ready to bring Jamie on, because I really would like to bring her perspective in here and for her to talk about what we've been talking about. And
Turn
so,
your mic on, Jamie. There you go.
I want to introduce Jamie. Jamie McKibben is the founder of Life Giving Life and owner of Healing House Men's Sober Living. She's a recovery coach and a smart recovery facilitator, and she's been doing this for quite some time. So we're very excited to have you on, Jamie. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much.
So just before I start, I do need to say, like, with my credentials, I am an LCDC I level 3. And the reason why I say that is because the information that I put out there, I want to make sure that, like, I'm covered. But anyways,
so what does that mean, Jamie? What does that mean?
So a licensed chemical dependency counselor. That means that I am a substance abuse counselor, and that's what I specialize in. So my whole niche is substance abuse and substance use disorder. I work with families and individuals, some adolescents, with those who are struggling with substance use disorder. And that's what the center is based off of. So the center was created actually from my clients' relapses. In the place that I was at before I started the center, I just saw this, like, need for these different areas that I saw people really struggling in, like, even after they got sober, right? So, like, families, how to communicate with families, how to relearn how to communicate with your spouse or your families. Do I tell my kids that I have a substance use disorder? Do I not tell my kids? Like, what does that look like? Life skills. We talked a little bit about this last night, but, you know, when we start using or drinking, whatever the substance is, it stunts your brain growth, right? So if I'm using and start using or drinking at the age of 18 and I'm 40 and I'm sober, I'm not really sure how to put a budget or how to pay my bills or, you know, these types of things. So that's what the center was really geared towards. It was very, very sad to see some people that were struggling, because we only know what we know, right? And if somebody had been using for a really long time and now all of a sudden they're sober and they're trying to figure things out, but they feel like they're drowning and everybody is kind of like shunned them a little bit, or they just have no one, that's where that relapse sets in. So the center is based around 5 core values, which is support through individual counseling groups, family counseling. We have like a health and wellness on how to get your body kind of back up and running. I mean, it takes a toll on our bodies. And then we have the education. So we do have educational classes, how substances affect the mind and the body. And then we also do sober fun events. So like, for instance, for Christmas, we rented out a private watching at a movie theater. And everybody they go and they have fun and they're meeting other people in recovery. And kind of to David's point on, you know, finding people in recovery, that big thing. People don't know how to have fun. and they lose all these friendships. And it's kind of like a death and grieving those friendships, right? Like, not to mention, we're grieving our drug of choice. If you think about it, it was our best friend for many years. It was there when we were happy, when we were sad, when we were depressed, when we were stressed out. It was always there. So now we kind of like find a new normal and figure out how we start coping without our old best friend. And a lot of it boils down to people, places, and your things and your environment, and changing all of that. That's very difficult. That's very, very difficult because it's uncomfortable. I always tell my clients, and if any of them are watching, they will know and probably throw something at their computer. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Well,
To
it's
stay
something,
sober, right?
something, yeah. With your talking, it's reminding me of conversations I've had with people that have gone through recovery, and I was like, what keeps their feet on both sides of the fence, right? Recovery and all that lifestyle or whatever. And someone actually nailed it on the head. Not just recently, we were talking, and it's like, if you're in a role like high up and you're the ones that are, you know, controlling the substance and how it's released and goes out, and you're getting the money and you've got this flow or whatever, when you show up and you run into those people, you're like a celebrity, you know. So it's something, it's an addictive lifestyle beyond the drug too. It's
Right.
So it was very interesting that they actually labeled it that. Wow, we show up and we're like celebrities for a few minutes, but those people are ghosts whenever you need something and you're sober. You know, they're really not there for you.
Well,
Very few of them are.
You know, it sounds like, Jamie, you're saying that community is really important, and a support system, or having something to replace what
Right.
what your body was wanting or craving, or the spirit or the emotions. And so I'm just real curious about something, David, in the industry that you're in. I mean, you still have people who are using all around you, right? I mean, how difficult was it to stay in your career and your, you know, and it being, doing what you're doing and continue to be in that environment? I mean, were you, I'm sorry, Jamie, I'm going to come right back to you, I promise. But I just had this question for David.
Well,
I just had this, because people are having to deal with that, right? Like, they have to go back to work, and I'm speaking because my stepfather was in recovery for many years, and it was oil and gas. And he still had to go back to that environment, which is heavily inundated with addiction. So, Dave, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, just real quick. First off, I think it's glamorized that the music business is so full of dope and stuff. And I mean, it is, but oil and gas is too. The good old boys love their hookers and cocaine, and their scotch just like crazy, and they get away with it. And it's not seen and it's not publicly glamorized. So that's one thing about music. It's, and the idea that if I'm high, I'm creative. There's it's just a big BS, thing that we love. I don't know why we love it as a culture, name anybody, whatever, I'm old. So Jimi Hendrix, oh, well, he was tripping on LSD and he made this great, it's kind of a bunch of BS, So but going back to what Jamie was saying, yeah. So I think that it doesn't matter if you're doing uppers or downers, and I don't mean specifically up or down. I mean depressants of any kind, alcohol or any kind of stimulants. The thing about it is you have this sort of drama, like Dee was talking about this glamorous sort of rock star, and you get this hype, and then what happens is you realize that life is really kind of about right here, like like when the first time I heard I'm okay with being okay, which, like, that's boring. Like, I don't want to just be okay. I want things to be like souped up in some kind of way, some kind of, something, I'm running from the cops, or I don't want them to know I'm loaded, so there's always this thing. So when it's not there, it's just sort of like endorphins firing, you're used to this thing going on, and then suddenly you're like, and it's just weird to sit in it, and you have to sit in it and go, well, I mean, there are highs and lows obviously in life, but the way our brains are going, so we have to get used to sort of sitting in that, and then you have to find things, like the thought of like, how am I going to have any fun if I'm not loaded, that kind of stuff, and so it's just kind of coming down to a more realistic level, because we were living in a hyped up false, it's like going to the movies, pow, it's really loud and this stuff is, and it's all BS. It's a movie, it's a story, it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so
So our listeners are commenting. They're saying sober fun. Yes, they're learning how, and
yes, you have
also,
to
yeah,
learn.
you have to learn how, and then having that experience of being on both sides of the fence, being that movie star or that hero or whatever for 5 brief minutes, but then you're off alone. Then they're
I
not
saw
there.
I saw this guy once, go, oh, I have to go to a meeting for an hour a day. Like, oh, it's the, oh, like how, and then so I asked him, I said, well, what would you do every day to go get dope? And man, he lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh my God. And he told this fantastical tale of running over a hill and through the valley and across the snow and running from the wolves and the cops. And it was such an amazing thing. And then he finally got the dope, and then he got really fun. It was like this. And it's like, oh, this is bullshit, isn't it? This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Because
It's
that's the
not
way we like to live, on this high drama
Yes,
thing.
I have to post this, that
Mhm.
one of our listeners says, "Embrace the suck." I have to post that.
Oh,
Philip Oxley. Well, there's the one that there's the one that said
I feel.
life being sober sucks, but being
I don't know. I mean, I've had friends that are in recovery, and they're like, "Is this what sober is like?" I don't know. I mean, they're like, "What the hell?"
it gets better. It's that initial
Right.
it's that initial thing. It's
Yeah.
that initial thing. You're just
Well,
not used to
it
living
sounds
like.
like Jamie reteaches people at the Life Giving Life.
Yeah.
You guys teach people how to have fun. You
Yeah.
retrain them on how to embrace life instead of, like what David was just saying, a false life. It's a farce. So talk a little bit more about what the center does with families. I find that intriguing, and I find that really, really of substance.
Yeah, we work with a lot of families. Whenever somebody that comes in the Suns, really encourage the family counseling to go along with it, or this counseling to go along with it, because there's so many different dynamics that go into somebody getting sober and keeping them so long term with families. So things like boundaries, with spouses, you know, husband, wife comes home. Have you been drinking? Let me smell your breath. Like, I'm going to drug test you. Da, 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 da. Like, tell me. And they're just kind of like, ugh. It gets to a point like teaching the spouse or the family, to me, in my opinion, is just as important as helping the individual struggling. Because if the individual that's struggling with substance use gets on track, changes their whole lifestyle, because that's what it entails, changing your whole lifestyle, and the other person or family is not changing, it's not going to end well. We have to make sure that, what does boundaries look like? What is enabling? Enabling is very simple. If you are doing something for someone, they can do for themselves. So if giving them gas money and they're not working, but like the go-to for, it's not gas money, guys.
Yeah.
And I tell my
No.
clients too, your drug dealer is your drug dealer. It's not your friend. Okay, so kind of like what Dee Dee was getting at. Oh, like we're a celebrity. No, you're that's your drug dealer or your deal. You know what I mean? If they were your friend, they would be the first one saying, "Get in my car. I'll take you to an AA meeting, or I'll take you to a meeting, or whatnot."
Yeah.
That is what a friendship looks like. And the other aspect of it is with kiddos, when kiddos are involved and what that looks like. David brought up I have like 2 pages of notes, thanks to, um, of things along the lines like with family and the learned behavior. So really good points that David was hitting on were things like, you know, this is what all we know. This is what we grew up with. And, you know, why can I put it down and my husband or wife can't, or my brother or sister,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And there's driving factors that go into this whole thing. And they don't always, it's not the substance. Like the substance is a symptom, right? It starts with a driving factor internally. There's something going on that hasn't been dealt with. And until we deal with our stuff, until we deal with what we're dealing with and what we're trying to avoid, that we're not going to sober long term. We might be able to stay sober for a little while, but we're white knuckling it, because the very thing that we are avoiding is what's driving us to use or drink, right?
Mhm.
So when we start digging in deep is when the work starts really happening.
One of the things as a
And that's
person,
when changes take place.
yeah, one of the things as a person, having a child now that's in addiction, and then having really good friends that have gone through recovery that are, champions in my book. It's like when they were going through the process of certain things, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, what makes you think I don't want to go do those things and just disappear off the map and not give a flying fracking frick, whatever. Life is not always easy. And it doesn't mean that I'm stronger than anyone else. It means I fight that battle on my knees a little harder, or I probably replace it with a different addiction, like bad relationships or something crazy. But, it's just because people haven't gone off into that life path doesn't mean they haven't thought about it or think, wow, that must be nice to go off and just not give a shit about anything for a while. But I'm sorry, that's just real talk. But I see, having been someone that tried, I'm putting this out there public now, let me just tell this, tried smoking crack cocaine because I'm not ashamed of my life, and didn't get addicted. Sorry, it's emotional. It's, God's grace, because I've seen what it does to people. It doesn't mean I'm any stronger. It means I just, it's something different about my program, my makeup, my genetic, or I had enough friends around me that I saw how it destroyed their life. I don't know, but, I kind of went off on a rabbit trail on that, but, this is real, and we want to bring real help on the show.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, Dee Dee.
Well,
This
thank you
is
for
real.
sharing.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I appreciate you trusting us with that.
Yeah, thanks for
I
sharing.
think
Dee.
that you hit a lot of different things in regards to that. I think that there's all the elements that you have named off go into it. Our upbringing and our family of origin has a lot to do with how we are molded. And so, for an example, so I'm in recovery, and there was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with in my treatment, and one of them was anxiety. So it's we all have our struggles, and let's make that really clear for everybody watching with this whole, because I wanted to touch on shame a little bit and self-sabotage, but everybody has a struggle. Okay, every single person walking outside has a struggle. Ours just happens to be substance. Doesn't make us these horrible people that are these addicts and don't, it makes us human, and we're trying to cope in a way that maybe we weren't taught how to cope in a healthy way. When we talk about upbringings and childhood and family of origin, all of that comes into play. That's why if we have like a young girl that's growing up in just total chaos, that's all she knows is total chaos. Mom and dad fighting all the time. There's drinking, growing up in bars, there's abandonment issues, like all of these things. But what some people don't understand, on kind of like, we'll go towards the stigma right now on like, well, just deal with it, put it down. That's that little girl's normal. That's what she was taught. She was taught to go drink when shit happened.
Yeah.
So her whole life, that's what she is taught to do. That is her normal. So finding a community, finding people that are out for her best interest, it's going to be kind of difficult at first because she doesn't really know what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, so that's kind of what we do. And I went off on a rabbit trail. Sorry, guys. That's kind of what we
That's
do at the
okay.
center. I want everybody to figure out how to make their own friendships. I just try and give a platform so they can meet other people to do that, right? It's very important that we don't do things for us, because I mean, if you're going to do it for me, I'm going to let you, right? Especially if we don't want to do it. So it's very important that if we do have somebody struggling, if we do have somebody in recovery, like letting them know how capable they really are. You know, David, that's 10 years, that's a huge deal. And you were talking a little bit about like having kiddos and how, man, I felt like I wasted some time. But I think there's something to be said for being able to show your kids that you can be at your lowest point in your life and pick yourself back up and stand on your own 2
Yes.
feet. And be like, you know
Yes.
what? Yeah, I struggled,
Yeah.
but I went from here to here and I did it, and I did it the right way and a healthy way. And I feel like there's something to be said for that when you're talking kids and family and showing them how capable that they really are and allowing them to be that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Jamie. Absolutely. And I've adopted a new phrase from some of the things you were just talking about. It's time to give everyone the dignity of their path.
Yeah. Yes.
Instead of enabling others, allow them to make mistakes to get to their lowest point. It's a challenge, right? Like, if someone who really loves another person, whether it be your child or your parent or whoever, it's hard to say, you're going to hurt yourself and I got to let you. That's very difficult. But it gives them the
I get
dignity.
a lot of that with, sorry.
Mhm.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think it's wonderful. It's a good conversation. Craig, I'm sorry, David, what did you want to add to that?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea.
You look like you wanted to say something. But that's great, Jamie. I mean, I really appreciate where you went with that, because it's so hard for people to let go who really love someone has an addiction issue, to say, I'm gonna have to let you make your mistakes. I'm gonna have to not give you gas money. I'm gonna have to not let you stay at my house anymore if you're gonna use drugs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
if we don't let them fall, how will they know how capable they really are?
Yeah. One of our listeners says, "Find yourself, skin those knees."
It is a
Exactly.
slippery slope, though. You know, I must say, you know, it's easier when it's not. I'll just say it is easier when it's not your children. You know, it's easier to let go of a friend or somebody, and when it's your children, it really pushes your buttons in a whole different level. And the thing about it is we're talking about skinning knees and stuff, but really what happens is people die.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's scary. And, and all the little isms and the sayings and the, that I picked up in recovery, it's hard to just say, it takes what it takes when it's your own kid living on the street and being homeless and being messed up. And I'm just putting that out there.
No, you're right. You're right. And I want to add to that something that I've had to learn, and it's been by faith and through data and the healing modalities that Brandy and I use, that, I had to learn that my triggers were unforgiveness. When my kids would come and try to manipulate, I have one that's in active drug use right now, and one that's probably looking at some jail time because he has, was a dealer. And it's like, they would use your past as maybe not being the best mom or failing or whatever, as, well, you owe me this kind of thing. You have to get over that. You have to, like, I think, Jamie, you help parents or siblings or brothers or sisters, learn to set those boundaries that, you don't owe them their demise. You owe them life by setting that boundary and saying, hey, it's like I told someone once, I tell my kids no, and what, your no's coming, but I wasn't really telling my oldest kid no. I had to go through a lot of grieving and a lot of pain to, no means no. You can't take my life down anymore. I'm laughing, but it's like, wow, they'll destroy you.
So what, Jamie, thanks for sharing that, Dee Dee. I really appreciate that you share your story with other people as well. I have a story too. I'm not going to talk about it until next week, because, this is an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
This is, and we need to continue it and on. And I hope Jamie can keep coming back too. Yeah. Jamie, we'd love to have you on a regular basis on our show, because this is just that important. It is just that important. We talk about everything that's happened with the pandemic, but my God, how many people die of drug overdose every year? It's staggering. That's one of the real problems that we have, and we have to tackle it together, all of us. It's going to take our communities coming together to tackle this issue. And so what I want to know now, Jamie, is what does it look like if somebody comes in or calls into your center and say, I have a problem, I'm not sure. What's the process? How do they just kind of get started?
So we'll bring them in for an intake. I'll normally do a consultation with them before we really get the ball rolling. I want to get kind of where they're coming from, where they're at, some history with substance use, where their headspace is at. My first question to every client, my very first question is always going to be, do you even want to be sober? Not because I'm questioning them being there or trying to be an a-hole. It's because, and then I will immediately follow it up with, do you even want to be sober? And if the answer is no, I'm actually okay with that, because I know now what direction we need to go into. We can get dry. We can white knuckle it and be dry, but the end goal is long-term recovery. And, there's times where, and I honestly, I love it, where they feel they're comfortable enough and they can trust, and they're like, no, I don't, but that's why I'm here. I need to figure out why I don't want to be sober, So that's kind of what that consultation looks like, kind of figuring out each other, if this is going to be even a good fit therapeutically. And then how that works is ours, because it was really important for me to offer really good client care that was full circle. So they will be assigned a recovery coach and a life coach. They'll have somebody that can do step work with them, and they'll meet with them once a week. And we do not take insurance. We are a nonprofit, so we're a 501c3, and it was really important to make it really affordable, because it's extremely heartbreaking seeing people that are wanting to get help and being turned away because they can't financially do it. So that's kind of what that process looks like. They come in, we'll meet, we'll show them around. Right now we're in transition of moving. So, however, they can come to our new location, our temp location. It's still the same process. It's still the same team. Everything is still exactly the same. And then with the Mal Sober Living, if that's something that they're wanting to get into too, we'll let them tour the house. They can meet the guys. They can kind of see what all that's about as well, because the Sober Living actually incorporates the program in its own right. So that's something that we can incorporate.
Yeah. Let me say this real quick. You have a really good resource system too. So like with the family part, if someone's married and their spouse is addicted, you provide the male care, but you have a friend that you can refer that also has a women's sober living and counseling for that as well. So you really have a plethora of resources. And I know you, just because somebody may not can afford it or whatever, you're going to dig out and dig deep and try to get them help however you need to.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Dee Dee, because there are so the resources that we refer out to, I like the one that you're talking about, Kim Livesey. She owns the Legacy House over in the Woodlands. It is an absolutely amazing, beautiful place. Ted up in Conroe, he has an amazing place. These are people I know. I have either toured them, I know them, I trust them, because you do need to be careful. Like the reality is, you need to be like, we need to be careful on if we're sending a loved one or family member somewhere to sober living or treatment, and do our homework. So I'm glad that you said that.
We're going to get more into that next week. This is a 2-part series, right? So next week, we're going to talk more about what questions to ask. What do you want to look for in a recovery center? Resources. So next week's going to be just as amazing as this one. So I'm super excited for next week's too. Jamie, if somebody wants to reach you or get in touch with you, how can they call you and just ask questions or,
just they can call my cell phone directly, actually, which is the 512-662-9041. My email is jamie.lglrecovery@gmail.com. And I think y'all posted at the bottom of our screen. So feel free to call or text, email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can if I miss you. So
awesome. And then we have the lifegivingliferecovery.org is the website, and they can go there and just find out more information, right?
Yeah.
And
our whole program on there for both the Life Giving Life and the sober living.
Yeah. Awesome. So let me just say that out loud for our podcast folks. So for the men's sober living house, the web address is www.hhsoberliving.com. And for Life Giving Life, it's www.lifegivingliferecovery.org. So this is, you're a gift, Jamie. Thank you so much for what you do. And David, if anybody wants to reach you and just to say, hey, I really like what you said, can we just talk? Can we meet for coffee? Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely. I'm available for sponsorship, and I can sponsor anybody that wants to work through steps, or if you just want to have a chat and anything like that, yeah, absolutely, you can reach me.
And how can they reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, you do have my info. It looks like it's right there. So davidcraigmusic@gmail.com. And you can also find that information on my website, davidcraigbasis.com. You can find me on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find, actually.
Oh, awesome.
I'm not hiding from anybody anymore.
Yeah, for the pod, we always have to repeat it though for the podcast because there's no visual aspect to that, and we're aired across 6 podcasts. Sure. So it's davidcraigmusic@gmail.com or davidcraigbasis.com, and on Facebook, David Craig Music.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. And thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jamie, Dee Dee, and Brandy. Yeah, great.
And so I just want to say to our audience members now, or people listening in right now, how important it is if you're struggling with this, if you know someone who's struggling with this, please connect to someone. It doesn't have to even be somebody like Jamie or David. Connect with somebody who cares about you, and maybe they will also be able to help you in some way. And you are too important. Life is too important for you not to do something, to change your life and to do something different. And if you're waiting for a sign, if you're waiting from somebody to tell you, this is it. Right? Yeah. This is your sign. This is it today. You can change your life. It's not as difficult as you would think, but it does take some effort and it takes some heart, right? So
if I can do it, you can do it.
Right? Dave is right. If he can do it, you can do it. So I want to thank you both again. This has been really, really amazing. And we're going to continue this conversation. Jamie, we're going to have you back on next week, and we're going to talk about resources and get deeper into the what we call meat and potatoes of what addiction's really about and how we can help everybody who's in this conundrum get out of it and break out. Thank you all so much.
I'm excited. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Long
you.
life and vibrant health, everyone. Namaste.